Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Johanna Chan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. One jab is needed before the Lunar New Year for entry to places such as restaurants. Cathay Pacific apologizes for inconvenience and disruptions after being summoned by chief executive. And essential supplies are rushed to locked down Xi'an as COVID cases rise. People will have to have at least one jab against COVID before the Lunar New Year if they wish to go to places such as restaurants and gyms. This comes as authorities step up defenses against a fifth wave after 2 diners at a Kowloon restaurant were confirmed to have the Omicron strain. With infections continuing to spread, health authorities are warning of a 5th COVID wave. Hong Kong has so far logged 81 Omicron cases, with another 28 listed as suspected. Around 90% of all COVID infections are of the Omicron variant, up from 35% 2 weeks ago. Although over 20,000 people have been tested, the authorities are tightening measures to prevent a further spread. Health Chief Sophia Chan said people must have at least one jab before the Lunar New Year to enter premises, such as restaurants, entertainment venues, cinemas, gyms, and beauty parlors.
We are not saying that one dose of vaccination is enough, but we also have to be practical. And why before Chinese New Year? Because we understand, during the holiday, people will be gathering, people will be, coming together. So it is important for them to protect themselves as soon as possible.
All COVID patients are currently being treated at North Lantau and Princess Margaret hospitals. But there is a contingency plan to use other hospitals and reopen Asia World Expo for less severe patients. 500 beds will be available in the first stage. There were 19 new cases to date. All but one carried both the N501Y and T478K strains, meaning they may be infected with the Omicron variant. 17 were arrivals from the United States, Philippines, Canada, and Britain. One was a 47-year-old Cathay Pacific cargo pilot who spent a night out with 2 friends at the Peachy restaurant in Soho, Sogo House in Xi'an, and the Iron Ferries bar in Central. He had returned from the United States on the same flight as a 44-year-old aircrew member who tested positive. The 2 local cases were also related to the 44-year-old who dined at Moon Palace in Kowloon. One was his father, and the other a construction worker who sat several tables away. The worker, who lives in a Tuen Mun village house, has been to various parts of Hong Kong, including Wan Chai, Ma On Shan, Tai Po, and Kwai Fong. Health experts have urged New Year's Eve revelers to avoid crowds amid fears of an Omicron outbreak. This came as people lined up for tests at Festival Walk. A queue formed at level P3 in Festival Walk, where a mobile testing station was set up this morning. A 44-year-old Cathay Pacific aircrew member who ate at the Moon Palace restaurant in Kowloon Mall was confirmed with the Omicron variant yesterday. Many lining up for tests work in the shopping hub or nearby offices.
I didn't really stay inside the mall, but according to the company policy, I have to take a test. I think the Omicron is not that severe for the symptoms, so I guess it is not really a problem, but I still get to get a test, so it's okay.
This woman, who visited the restaurant on Tuesday, said she took the test because she was worried that if she had the virus, her 2 children would be infected. The Moon Palace closed yesterday afternoon. Experts believe the aircrew member passed on the virus to his 76-year-old father and a construction worker who was sitting several tables away. Government advisor David Hui urged the authorities to track down other diners. He said since Omicron has a short incubation period, people will know whether there is a community outbreak in the next few days. Respiratory expert Leung Chi-Chu warned of false negative results, as the variant can take up to 3 days to surface. Hui and Leung advised people to avoid gathering in crowded areas tonight for New Year's Eve. Wing Chak House in Shek Kip Mei, where the aircrew member's father lives, reopened this morning after no infections were found during a lockdown last night. There were also no cases in Block A of Hoi Tao building in Kennedy Town, the home of another aircrew member. Cathay Pacific has apologized for the inconvenience and disruption caused and suspended those who flouted self-isolation rules. The apology came after the chief executive summoned the airline's top bosses to demand an explanation. Raymond Young reports.
With passenger flights still operating at around 3% capacity, Cathay Pacific has been staying afloat through its cargo revenue, which jumped 15.8% last month. But with quarantine rules for its cargo crew set to tighten further, the government is essentially pulling the plug on the airline's life support. Starting tomorrow, all cargo crew who have laid over in overseas places or Taiwan must spend 7 days at a quarantine hotel on returning to Hong Kong. That's up from a 3-day quarantine, which was only announced on Tuesday. Even before the quarantine period was lengthened, Cathay announced overnight that it was no longer able to operate long-haul cargo flights. All services to Europe, Australasia, Riyadh, Dubai, and across the Pacific will be suspended until January 6th.
We have already invited and asked the airlines to require and schedule more aircrew to participate in closed-loop operation in order to reinforce the manpower deployment to meet the air cargo demand. We would also engage other airlines to help supplement any loss in the capacity in the coming periods.
Speaking to the press this afternoon, Health Chief Sophia Chan revealed that Chief Executive Carrie Lam has summoned Cathay Chairman Patrick Healy and Chief Executive Augustus Tang to express her dismay. The executives were told to review the matter and give the public an explanation. In response, the airline apologized for the inconvenience and disruption and suspended the employees who violated home isolation rules. It described their actions as extremely disappointing, which undermined the dedication and compliance by its 10,000 air crew. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
Local Delta cases on the mainland jumped by 166 yesterday, with all the infections except one in Shanxi province. There were 161 cases in the capital, Xi'an, alone. Vice Premier Sun Chunlan ordered tougher measures to crush the virus. Authorities raced to provide essential supplies to the 13 million Xi'an residents who have been locked down for over a week. But this man managed to lighten the mood by dressing like Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor, when taking his COVID test. Soaring COVID infections and tighter movement curbs marked the end of 2021, an eerie echo of the start of the pandemic 2 years ago. The coronavirus has not only strained public health systems, but also tested global solidarity and trust between people and their governments. Sarah Wang reports.
Ditching masks and ignoring social distancing, hundreds of people in Barcelona marked the end of 2021 with protests against antivirus curbs and vaccine requirements. Resistance is growing worldwide as new variants sabotage efforts to combat the COVID pandemic. Revelers in Rio de Janeiro shrugged off the fast-spreading Omicron strain and flocked to the beach ahead of New Year's Eve. As record-high daily upticks plagued Australia, officials in hard-hit Sydney urged caution during New Year celebrations.
People should carefully consider the risks of attending events and gatherings. People should be vaccinated, use QR codes, wear a mask, practice social distancing, and plan the night.
But after enduring some of the world's tightest restrictions, Australians have had enough.
It's got to a point now where we've just got to live with it. We can't stay locked up forever.
Since the coronavirus emerged in Wuhan in late 2019, it has infected over 287 million people and taken 5.4 million lives. The United States leads the world with 54 million infections, followed by India and Brazil. But in the current surge, Britain, France, and Spain had the highest caseload in the last 28 days after the US. Over 9 billion doses of COVID vaccine were administered to 58% of the global population since the inoculation drive started a year ago. But the distribution is lopsided, as 76% of the residents in high-income countries got at least one dose, compared to 8.4% in poor nations. The United Arab Emirates tops the world with a 99% immunization rate, while Burundi has vaccinated less than 1% of its citizens. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
Locally again, at least 2 pedestrians were killed and 3 others injured when a car mounted a pavement in Sampokong at high speed. Dashboard camera footage captured the moment the sports car went sideways and veered into the opposite lane on Tai Yao Street just after 6 p.m. It came to a stop after knocking down several pedestrians and ramming into a shop, while flying debris ended up inside a convenience store, sweeping goods off the shelves. The driver appeared to be conscious inside the vehicle after the accident. And coming up after the break, desperate Afghans sell their children to avert starvation. And Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden talk tough over the phone.